United States submarine base at Key West, Florida. A dispatch that quoted President Truman's press secretary, Charles Ross, as saying that President Truman has no knowledge of any secret project by this government that would give substance to the existence of such objects. Ross also said that both the Air Force and the Navy deny that such objects exist.
Okay, cool. Did you figure it out?
Yeah. We're about a half second behind, but I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be able to find it better than just taking a shot in the dark.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up? My name is Noelle, and I'm gonna be fucking real with you. Ever since we did the ghost experiments, I have been contacted.
You were being contacted before, though.
I know, but
Is it just more?
Yeah, I'll tell you. You introduce yourself, and then I'll elaborate.
I'm Chelsea. I'm the not hot friend.
Deep cut for those who know. Also, that's such a stupid comment too, because like you are so hot and you have only gotten hotter. Like you have just gotten skinnier and your jawline has just gotten more defined and your hair is just getting longer and healthier. It's so weird to me. And like you are also, you know, not young and you look great. You look younger than me.
I'm quite old.
You are in your mid 30s and you look, honestly, if I'm being honest, putting my honest hat on, you look at max 25.
That's really sweet of you. I would only give you super good compliments, but you don't need any more because you're the hot one. Yeah, so you've been getting contacted.
Okay.
I almost wonder if we should put this in our pockets before we really dive in.
What do you mean?
Well, because we're going to talk a little bit about the dangers of talking to the dead.
I know, but I don't believe in that, and I'm going to explain why I don't believe that in the episode.
Okay. Let's hear what's been going on.
And this is the whole thing. It's not malevolent. It's not me.
Okay.
If anything, it's almost like indifference. So,
yeah.
Because, you know, great quote, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And that is like the tea. So the I'm not sure if it was the night. No, it was the night after. Was it? I'm not sure if it was Sunday night or Monday night.
It had to have been the night after because you would have told me the next day because you were responding to texts about what happened to Oliver. That happened that night.
Yeah, but like it was when I woke up. So it was either waking up Monday morning or waking up Tuesday morning.
Gotcha.
I was at Ty's because we went to a jazz game. I think it was Monday night because we went to a jazz game for Halloween. And that night, as I was like falling asleep, there was the loudest voice next to me. And it was just like, you're saying it's fake? Like it literally said it like that. Like you're saying it's fake? Like that.
That's
literally
creepy.
Clear as day. And it woke me up out of my sleep and I was like, hello? Hello? And I was like looking around and I was like, that must have been one of those moments where like you're half asleep, half awake and you like hear and see things.
You're more receptive to the other worlds.
But it was like right in my fucking ear. Like it came up next to my sleeping little head and was like,
yeah.
So you're saying it's fake? And I was like,
you astral
whoa.
projected into a conversation and then you heard what they were saying and you zip-zapped back into your body.
I will never know. We'll never know. So that was the experience the first time. And then Wednesday night, I get woken up, but I'm at my house now. Same fucking shit. And I wish I remembered. It was a full conversation happening right next to me. And it woke me up because it was continuing on. Like it wasn't just a sentence, it was literally a conversation. And that's what woke me up. And I like looked around and I was like, wait, what? And then I was like, maybe it's someone outside. So I look out my window, there's nothing, there's no one. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like that. And so the second time that happened, when that happened, I was like, it's not a fluke, like it's connected. But again, like it wasn't mean, it wasn't aggressive, it was almost just like it. Honestly, it feels like it's kind of like, you know, They Live. Do you know John Carpenter's They Live?
I know
No.
of it. I don't think
So-
I've seen it.
You know, like the whole thing is like if when you put the glasses on, it shows you reality, real reality, and you see that like fucking aliens have like taken over. So like you're looking at, so if he has the glasses off, everything's like in black and white, and he's looking at the TV, and it's like two news broadcasters like, you know, talking about whatever. Puts the glasses on, they're the fucking blue-faced aliens, and on the screen it just says like buy, 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 consume, 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 fear, fear, fear.
Ooh, I need to watch this.
It's one of the best movies ever. Please watch it. John Carpenter's They Live. I have film strips of it, like original pieces. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's great. I love it. But that's kind of how it feels. Like it's not like evil. It's not like I've welcomed evil, because even that example is like a little nefarious in
Yeah.
They Live, but it's the glasses. Like we've put the glasses on by participating and experiencing.
yeah.
And so now I just see it and I hear it. Now it's always been around us. It's always been amongst us. It's always happening constantly. And now that we have the glasses on, we see it more.
yeah.
That's how I feel about it, because it doesn't feel like negative or bad. It's just kind of like there.
Yeah, I don't think I've had anything since that I've noticed, but the just being there was kind of how I felt when we were doing the sessions. Whereas
Mhm.
I was more worried about the cops telling us to leave, honestly, or
Yeah.
me peeing my pants from
Yeah.
drinking too much liquid, not from being scared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I was quite hydrated, so that was like my main fear, and the ground was cold, and we sat down on the sidewalk.
Yeah, it was
Those are like
freezing out.
the things that I was really noticing, but everything else, like even all the spoopy supernatural stuff, I was like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're
it was,
here too?
yeah, it was like it wasn't scary at all, really.
Which is wild, because there are times where I've been real fucking scared over being completely alone. You know what I mean? Like those seem to be the scariest parts, when you're like at home and you're not like really hearing anything and your mind gets away from you. That's
Yeah.
what I've been like when I've scared myself the most.
yeah. It's weird, because like it's always the idea of it that scares you more than the
Yeah.
reality of it. I mean, you could say that about anything in life, honestly, but especially with ghosts.
Yeah, I had a lot of anticipation for our ghost session, and I was pleasantly surprised by
As was
having
I.
fun.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to say having fun. I was pleasantly surprised by the experience, and pleasantly surprised by the pleasant surprisingness of it.
No, 1,000%. When we were driving up to you, Ty's like, "What are you guys going to do if it doesn't work?" And I was like, "Report on how it didn't work." And he
Yeah,
goes,
that was my fear, I think.
"Yeah." And he was like, "Okay." Like that's what he assumed. That's what
Yeah.
I kind of assumed, and that's
Same.
what you assumed.
Yeah.
And when we got there and that wasn't the case, everyone was fucking shocked and shook.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's fucking dive into what the hell
Yeah.
we did.
let's go.
So we did a spirit box. So what is a spirit box, you may ask? So HiggyPop.com probably gives the best explanation I've seen with the following. Quote, a spirit box is a popular paranormal gadget which scans through the radio spectrum in hopes that a spirit can make their voices heard amongst the white noise and fleeting snippets of radio broadcasts. So it's literally just that's all you hear until like a sound comes through. So the idea behind a spirit box is that as it scans through various channels of white noise, something, and we leave that interpretation up to you of what that something is,
Yeah.
can come through in short bursts of energy, which we hear and then interpret as answers to a question. So the spirit box came about in 2002, and most agree that it was invented by a paranormal researcher named Frank Sumption. So prior to Frank, people mostly communicated with the dead using Ouija boards, which have gained a pretty big stigma in the paranormal community as being something very dangerous due to how unpredictable they can be. And although most are familiar with the popular and controversial children's toy, there can be real dangers to the board if you believe. So according to psychicsource.com, there are four
Yeah, they seem very credible.
I will say that just to put it at the end, at the very end of this article, it said this is why you should use our resources instead of a Ouija board. I'm like, oh, you're just trying to get fucking paid. So take that with a grain of salt. But reading through this is like general stuff as to what I've heard why you don't use a Ouija board. I'm sure you've heard the same, but basically it's this. First, you're opening a door to things you cannot control or understand. Basically, when you use a Ouija board, you've established an all-access club, all ages, with no bouncers minding the door. You could experience nothing, or you could allow lingering spirits to hang out even if you didn't intend them to. 2, this means you could establish a connection with the wrong entities. So Ouija boards were very popular with making contact with a specific dead person in mind. However, there are beings on the spiritual plane that could just be down to mess with you. So you could basically invoke something bad. And 3, you open yourself up to uncomfortable communications. Now, we kind of ran into this a little bit in our experience. I wasn't necessarily scared, but they were a little uncomfortable.
They were a little uncomfortable.
A little at the end. We'll talk about them. But essentially, there's no way you can control what something is going to say to you, or you may learn something very uncomfortable or even scary. And you and I talked about this on the way home because I mentioned that I was tempted to like ask about my mom or my sister. And the reason I didn't was because I didn't want to hear something horrible. And there's no controlling that. So I could have heard something that, you know, could have fucked me up forever and scarred me for life. And so that's like another danger of it. And this last one, I buy into hook, line, and sinker, and I'm sure this is the biggest danger of using a Ouija board, and that's basically a psychogenic illness, which is real, definitely real, and something you don't want to get. So basically, these are illnesses that have a psychological origin rather than a physical one. And there are things in history that have been credited as psychogenic illnesses or plagues, and perhaps one of the most notorious ones that I found was, you know, essentially the Salem witchcraft trials, where a group of children became afflicted with quote-unquote spirits that caused the deaths of innocent people. Essentially, it's just like a hive mind hysteria where a bunch of people buy in.
Yeah, just hysteria, just mass hysteria.
Yeah. The France dancing disease that I'm sure a lot of people also know about, where people just dance themselves to death back in the day, also probably this. But perhaps less known is an incident that happened at an all-girls Catholic boarding school in Mexico. So after word got out that some of the girls had played with a Ouija board, suddenly 512 students were hit with mysterious symptoms which caused them to have headaches and trouble walking. Psychologist Nashiela Loa Zavala, diagnosed this incident as a mass psychogenic illness caused by the belief that the Ouija board had cursed the school.
So, here are my thoughts about that. Because, again, do we want to blame the Ouija board or do we want to blame the Catholic Church? So let me talk about this. Let me talk about this. Let me stand on my soapbox for a brief moment. So back in the day, you and I did an episode about Victorian death practices called Covered Mirrors. I think that's what the name was of the episode.
Yeah.
And to me and you, and I think most people who listen to that episode or know anything about Victorian death practices, there is something connected and pure about the way people handled death back then.
I was specifically jealous of the way that they handled death because it had specific rules that essentially made it so you didn't have rules. The one that I liked was I wear mourning clothing so that you can treat me as a person in mourning until I'm ready. Yeah. It's not until you're uncomfortable with me being sad. It's until I'm ready to tell you I'm done being in mourning. I was so fucking jealous of that. I was like, I would still be in mourning clothing then.
Literally.
I want everyone to know it.
The thing about the Victorian mourning rituals and practices was not just like the clothes, but also the timing. So it went on for a year, depending on how close the person was in proximity to you, in relationship to you. You had different practices, and they literally had magazines that went over what to wear, what to do, how to act, how to treat people, how to treat yourself. And there was something so freeing about giving that up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just being told what to do when you're in that period of grief, and also how people should treat you. But then it also put a time limit on it, not short, but long enough to say, okay, we've given you your time. You can still be in mourning and wear but now it goes to the ribbon now.
Yeah.
but you've got to get back out. Okay.
Yeah.
We did it.
And-
we did it. And now you got to go.
It kept ritual to it, which gave a sacredness to it, but also like took out the capitalism, which I think is like what made it. It was like you get to do all this stuff, and none of it's making the funeral industry money.
Mhm.
So it has a little bit more of a personal effect to it that I really liked. And it would be really cool if we could do some more of this stuff where rituals are observed. But we don't really have
Yeah.
rituals around our dead unless it costs a lot of fucking money here in the United
No,
States.
1,000%. There are some people on Etsy who are trying to bring back the mourning ribbons. So people like kind of know to signify, like you can go into work and wear it, and obviously people will look at it and read it and treat you differently. So it's kind of like the unspoken
Mhm.
bringing it back. But anyway, they also had superstitions. Some of them included carrying the deceased out of the home feet first so they couldn't look back and call someone else to follow them, closing curtains and covering mirrors until after the funeral so that the deceased image wouldn't get trapped in a looking glass. It was thought that you might be the next if you saw yourself in a mirror at a house where someone had recently died. So, again, keep those mirrors covered. To prevent bad luck, all clocks were stopped at the time of death if the person died in the home. And then they would turn family photographs face down to protect the family and friends from possession by the spirit of the dead or getting them trapped during the funeral procession. And these are silly, obviously, but there's also something like comforting in ritual, especially during the time of uncomfort and uncertainty, because even though like religion tries to put heaven as like the bread and butter at the end of the line, there is uncertainty in the process
Yeah.
and what happens and reassurance. And so there's something to these like rituals and superstitions that ensure safe travels. Do you know
gives,
what I mean?
Yeah, it gives you power in a
Mhm.
powerless situation.
1,000%.
It's like when somebody's scared of driving, so you give them like a little steering wheel to hold on to so they have like a semblance of control, you know? It's like super important, and we've been robbed of all of that. And I think that that's like why we have such a fucking hard time with death, because we don't have anything sacred about it anymore.
Mhm.
Like you don't even prepare your own dead.
Yeah.
You ship them off and somebody does it for you, and you're not involved in any of it. So you have no idea what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. And like we've talked about that even recently, like how death practices are just capitalistic hellholes exploiting your fear of death, because it's the two things that have to work at the same time. You have to be so afraid of death that you are willing to pay thousands of dollars for someone else to deal with it. And like the two things braid into each other and coexist in like a symbiotic relationship. If one dies, the other will as well. So like that's kind of how it is now. But there was another practice that was born mid-Victoria era from these mourning rituals, what is now referred to as spiritualism, or the spiritualism movement of the 19th century. So obviously it didn't stop at the rituals and mourning practices. People just got comfortable and welcomed and normalized with death. So spiritualism was just the natural continuation of that.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but my interpretation of what I've seen, because I'm not as much of a expert in this aspect of it with like the actual history of it so much as like the ritual importance, but it almost seemed like this was the fucking thing to do, and it was accepted. It would be no different than if you came over for like a game night. Like
1,000%.
It didn't seem like it was a taboo at all.
Not at all. When the norms, when mourning rituals and death are a part of your cultural norms, as does cultural acceptance of death and the presenting of new norms, such as spiritualism and what came with that. And I'm talking about like new norms as in exactly what you said. You would go see spiritualists and mediums. You would have them come to your home. They would be at the public squares and libraries. Like it was totally accepted and completely interwoven with life at the time, no matter your religion or creed. Everyone was into it. It had no qualms or problems.
Where did we go so wrong?
Oh, I'll tell you.
Oh,
So
yes.
the spiritualism movement is literally by definition people welcoming communication with the dead. by means of seances or via the 1886 invention of the Ouija board, because mediums were getting too busy and getting their answers took too long sometimes.
Yeah, we got to DIY this shit.
Literally. Spiritualism was and is the belief of spirit communication through mediums. And what was another medium other than the Ouija board? And I personally geek the fuck out about this era, because despite whatever religious trauma and religion people were dealing with or working through, this collective comfort and normalization of death made no churches go up, no preachers on, walking tours, no Bibles to sell. They literally would have mediums come and do lectures for free, and community halls offered public and private sessions. It was just the complete normalization and comfort of death, which unfortunately is something that happens to all of us. And right now, in our 2022 little peanut brains, we fear it and its uncertainty, and all people want to do is try to prevent it or stop it and whatever. And these motherfuckers were just in it. They were just living. They were just it. It was like breathing air, drinking water, and being okay with death, coping with it in such a natural way. And I don't know, it was so fucking cool.
Well, you've made such a good point too, because it's you say no religion can do that, because religion, I hope that there's something on the other side that's better, at least not worse, right? That's the faith aspect of religion. But then you come into Ouija boards and talking, and it's well, I'm hoping in one hand, but I'm going to fucking find out in the other. And it empowers you to get knowledge on in lieu of faith, or in abundance of faith, or an absence of faith. It gives you a fucking option instead of just being left in the dark.
Yeah, 1,000%. And that's honestly why it was able to be braided into religion, no matter if you were Protestant or Catholic, it was, or Baptist. It was all there. I don't even think Baptists were around then, but Protestants and Catholics were. Anyway, it 100% braided into your faith. You could almost use it as solidification of faith, or for people who didn't have faith, it was enough for them. So it literally filled in gaps that religion could never and will never do. And that's why I think everyone was in on it and loved it. And of course there were scammers like the Fox sisters. Maybe we'll do an episode on them because they're very fucking interesting. But this was an era of people who saw death like never before, from war, famine, just the struggle of living in America at this time. And Ouija boards were welcomed into homes. They were advertised as, quote, the wonderful talking board. There was nothing scary, spooky, demonic, evil. It was a gift. It was sold for $1.50, which I think is fun. But it was just another tool. Just in the same drawer you would have your Bible, you would have your Ouija board. And it worked for everyone. It was completely compatible with all religions. They could hold a seance on a Saturday night and then have no issues going to church the next day. And it was a beloved activity that people found a lot of comfort in.
Fun fact, because of inflation, $1.50 when the Ouija board was invented would be $35.33 today.
That probably sounds close to what it goes for, honestly.
I think that's what it goes for. Close to it.
The rights were sold, though. Obviously, the original creator of the Ouija board sold the rights to, I think, fucking Hasbro.
Or Milton Bradley, one of those. Yeah.
So that's that. But what's the shittiest thing, I think now, and a big disservice, is how when we speak and hear about Ouija boards, it comes with the connotation of you're opening a portal to demons and evil. You're opening up uncertainty. You're opening up yourself to things that are negative. And you're how did this fucking happen, right? Well, I will tell you. It was in the 1920s when the New York Times reported that a woman was possessed from the Ouija board. and she had to like go into psychiatric treatment, and feelings towards the Ouija board started to change. But you know what the fuck else was going on in the 1920s? Enter in the goddamn Great Depression. It was the pendulum swing. You had cinema, jazz, new ways of dressing specifically for women in the
pants, trousers.
In the 1920s. And then what? Followed by conservative Christians blaming progress, art, and open-mindedness for the Great Depression rather than bank failures and lack of government policies. And this was genuinely the beginning of the end of social acceptance and welcoming of the Ouija board and spiritualism in general. And of course, we've continued to see this pendulum swing throughout history, from the era of love in the 1960s, bringing in the staunch conservatism of the 70s and welcoming the doomsday-ass era of Reagan and the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s, which again saw the demonization of things under the branch of spiritualism, blaming Ouija boards and Metallica for the murder of 3 little kids in West Memphis, which, by the fucking way, I was looking this up. A judge rejected the West Memphis Three's request for new DNA testing literally June 23rd of this year. So
why? Wouldn't that completely eliminate them?
Yeah.
While simultaneously exposing the justice system for not being perfect?
Oh, yeah. You wonder
whoops.
why the Alfred plea would be thrown out the fucking window, and they would have to admit that they fucked up, which they won't do. So they'll never let actual justice happen.
It was the man in Bojangles.
Mm-hmm. So, all this to say, in summary, bring back the fucking Ouija board. It's cool. It has nothing but positive and good vibes attached to its origin story, and is the perfect representation of death acceptance in a way. And the only reason why our dumb little peanut brains thinks it's evil or causes evil is because some crusty fucking milquetoast ass man on a pulpit wanted you back in the pews putting money in his coffer. Also, Zach Bagans thinks Ouija boards are the devil, so you don't want to be anything like him. So, bring back the fucking Ouija board, and that's my soapbox rant on that. The only reason why people don't fucking like Ouija boards is because of crusty white men in churches.
I mean, I buy into that propaganda. I'm terrified of Ouija boards, right? But it makes sense.
Well, that's it at the end of the day, baby. It's propaganda. It's literally propaganda.
Which is so weird because, that, the pentagram is a Wicca symbol. So I see that now and I'm like, oh, Wiccan. And I don't think Satanist. And all it took was, someone telling me that was, a more of a Wiccan symbol. And I'm like, oh. And then it never bothered me again. But then I hear stuff about the Ouija board and I'm like, but what if that lady was fucking possessed by the Ouija board, bitch? But I'm a victim. I'm a victim of Hollywood because Hollywood plays up the spookiness of the Ouija board, right? It's a
victim of Hollywood, a victim of religious propaganda.
I have a TBI. What are you going to do, man?
At the end of the day, if you want to put your capitalistic hat that has a little Jesus cross on the top of it, what is worse for the church? Churches, no matter which one you're talking about, is you not needing them.
Not needing to give them money.
Exactly.
Yeah, organized religion's a plague.
1,000%. So,
the next method, we covered the Ouija board
we covered it.
Is the most popular way to communicate to the dead. The next one is just basic recordings and playback, and known as EVP. Mm-hmm. So, for one reason or another, this is accepted as being less dangerous than using a Ouija board because it is largely residual communication. People are either asking questions or simply talking while recording, and then subsequently using playback to hear what the ghosts have to say. And although there aren't really any articles dedicated to exposing the dangers of trying to record EVP, most of them consider any attempt to communicate with the dead as being either dark-sided or anti-Christian.
Boo.
For all the things that I'll mention above. And while most agree that there are similar dangers of hearing things that could be disturbing, in my opinion, the lack of ritual surrounding just trying to record EVP makes it a little less scary to me than using a Ouija board. I had originally written dangerous, but I think that the only reason a Ouija board would be dangerous to me would be the psychosomatic. I would freak myself the fuck out.
Yeah.
Maybe... I don't think a few years ago I would have entertained using a spirit box, but now I'm fine with it. So maybe in a few years we could readdress it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think in the same, again, victims of cinema, victims of propaganda, victims of religious infiltration of the mind. The same feelings that people get if a physical Ouija board was put in front of them are the same feelings people get when they're put into a bathroom with the lights turned off and told to say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times. You know that nothing bad is going to happen, but
Yeah.
like that shit is just fucking ingrained.
Yeah, 100%. Because that would scare the shit out of me. If I went in and just like, I don't like the dark anyway, bitch. I don't have to say nothing.
Yeah.
But you're 100% right. And there's a part of my lizard brain that, since I do believe in the other, where I don't want to open myself up to them to fucking get me.
Yeah.
And those are
I
ways.
mean, like literally even lights on. Try to go into your bathroom, look in the mirror, and say Bloody Mary 3 times. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
will not.
yeah, it just like it's
Yeah.
just that little fucking. That's
It's
how
this-
you know propaganda is so fucking
Right.
good. And
It's the same thing
strong.
with fucking Flow, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to go see Flow
Yeah.
again. That scared the shit out of me.
It's not the actual actions of what will happen after. It's the ritual of it.
Yeah, that's 100% it. I think that's why a Ouija board is different to
1,000%.
Especially
Yeah,
because,
1,000%.
like, do I find technology scary? No. Technology being involved immediately takes the ritual out of it, even though there's really nothing different, right?
Yeah,
When you get
yeah.
down to the bare bones of it. But little lizard brain, that's what helps it sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Ouija board on one side, and then we have just like recordings on the other.
Mm-hmm.
So enter the happy medium, which is the spirit box, which, like we said a little earlier, came about in 2002. Now, although this method does come with a lot of similar quote unquote dangers as using a Ouija board, there's a lot less outcry against their dangers in the paranormal community. So we kind of just covered this, but Noelle, I want to ask you, do you think spirit boxes are just an updated Ouija board?
1,000%. But just like how you feel less afraid by technology and more afraid of ritual, I think that spirit boxes are a way to bring back quote unquote spiritualism and like comfortability and acceptance of death and welcoming of death that we saw in the 1900s in early America, because a lot of people would agree with you. A lot of people are more okay using a spirit box because they're more comfortable and confident with technology. They don't have the religious dogma telling them that the ritual is bad or evil. And at the end of the day, like, that's all I want. Like, I don't want people to like obsess about finding proof of the afterlife. I don't think that's the purpose of it. That's not what I subscribe to. I'm very much a energy cannot be created nor destroyed, and we are all little beings powered by energy, so that energy has to go somewhere, and sometimes it gets trapped. That's where I am at. And I also think that you can put yourself in a bad psychological place if you just are using these things as a tool to prove or disprove religion, like whatever it may be. I think that's just a bad place to be. I think the perfect version of spirit box usage, or the modern Ouija board, as we could call it, is just removing the power from religious propaganda and stigmatization and fear of death, and just putting it back into your hands as something to be comfortable with. And honestly, like, this may sound bad, but like, have a little fun with it. Like,
Yeah.
be so comfortable and confident and okay with it that you can genuinely enjoy being around it.
Yeah. And it's actually like a super astute observation. Like, I didn't put it into this particular set of notes, but it's something I stumbled across a lot when I was trying to find any people saying, is there a danger to using a spirit box? And most of the answers were communicating with the dead is bad. And I was like, I'm not even going to put those in there, because obviously that's what people are going to say. But one of the main ones that I saw was actually an obsession with using it, and it was what you said, it was trying to find proof of something or trying to get answers or talking. It was like turning it from like a basically an interest into something where you're trying to make proof to yourself psychologically, either for or against. And they're like, that's just not healthy.
No.
It'd be the same as if you were trying to go outside and read the clouds in the sky for how your day should go, or it's like a supercharged like star chart. You know what I mean? It's like taking anything from the natural world and trying to put meaning into your day-to-day life. They're like, don't do that.
Well,
It's
to
not good for
me,
you.
it's almost like if you were to using a spirit box or a Ouija board in an obsessive way to either prove or disprove the afterlife or whatever to get yourself answers, and it becomes so obsessive, to me, that is no more than the same coin on a different side
like
of the stigmatization.
Astrology. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say astrology.
I mean, or astrology, but
Yeah.
like the power of stigmatization and propaganda
Yeah.
of fear of death, which is what at the end of the day I am always working on getting rid of for myself, and what I would hope that everyone could work on and get better with for themselves individually, which was the point of the spiritualism movement altogether. Like the evil that destroyed that, and the like evil and bad that took the power out of your hands and replaced it with fear, is the same thing that is causing you to become obsessive in proving or disproving. It's like the same fucking thing, and that's
Yeah.
my problem with it. Of course, there's like, don't be obsessed with it, like people who are so into astrology that they're like, I don't have a single friend who's a Scorpio, I will not fuck. Like, that is crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy fucking cuckoo bananas. But like, there's even just like a deeper nefariousness to it when you
Yeah.
take away its main intention of being comfortable with death and accepting death as a norm, when like you've gone the opposite way and now you're using it as an obsessive crutch.
Yeah, I think I could do damage to myself with this if I tried to do anything personal. You know what I mean? If I was like, anyone out there talk to my mom? Like, I think I would fuck myself up. I think that's how it's
1,000%.
dangerous. It could say nothing or it could say everything. Either way, I'm fucked. Emotionally, like spiritually, it's just not good, right? So there needs to be a sort of levity with this, I think, if you are psychologically weak, such as myself, to that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you're just not ready yet. You're just not there yet. And it's not like a fault of your own. It's honestly like the conditioning that you've been put through. It's what we've all been brought up in. It's, you know what I mean? We don't have the Victorian morning rituals to help us heal. We have to show up to work the next day because we don't have fucking PTO to take off after we lose someone. We aren't given instructions like they literally fucking were as guidelines to help you navigate through the seas of grief. And so of course most people could see this as like a potential danger, because whether it says, like you said, nothing or everything, like it will do some level of harm, and it's not your fault, but the systems that created that environment.
Right. And at the end of the day, I am on board with you in terms of like, I do think now that I've done more research that spirit boxes are just a technical upgrade to a Ouija board. But I think there's a little less human influence to answers. You know what I mean? There's no hand on the planchette. Like, we don't control what we hear.
Yeah.
So before I say like how we did it, I want to read off these suggestions for how to use a spirit box safely. I don't think we did any of these, by the way.
We sure did not.
Because we didn't look up anything. We're like, let's just fucking go. Like, we knew that we had to be blindfolded, and that was pretty much it. So according to straightforwardguidance.com, here are some of the best ways to protect yourself against spirits or communications that could harm you. So the first one is have protection. I interpreted this when I first read the sentence as like, wear a cross, or I wore a hematite ring that you got me because that's supposed to like keep bad shit from happening to you. And I wore a cross too. I was like, let's just double up. You know what I mean? But this actually said you should imagine yourself in a beautiful white light as protection, which I don't think that would do anything for me. It's like an orange shitty dollar store light bulb glow at best, if I were to imagine that. Also have a sacred space. Didn't do that. We did nothing to make our space sacred or protected.
All of my space is sacred.
Well, they recommended like crystals or candles. Like, we didn't.
I was thinking about, because I know Oliver was having a really tough time. I said it to Ty. We didn't say it to either of you guys. We were like, we should have brought crystals for them, because even again, ritual, the crystals don't have the power, but it's the ritual of having it that tricks our lizard brains into being like, now I'm safe and protected.
Right. Yeah. So that would have been great. I also thought about like, because we have all of the gems that we were sent by a listener in Canada that I thought about. I was like, I'm going to put them all in my pocket. But then I did not.
I mean, they're around everywhere, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? I've got a little altar up there. They're, you know, they're there. They're over there. They're doing their
Yeah.
job.
But the last thing I thought was like having a sacred space. Or I was like, should we bring salt and put salt around us? And I was like, but what if the ghosts can't get in? So I didn't think about that at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, the third is be prepared with your intention and have a clear focus on what sort of experience you want to have. You can even ask for gatekeeper spirits to keep the bad ones away from you. They're like, if fucking Led Zeppelin's your favorite band, name 3 songs. Like that's who comes through. You're like, oh fuck, it's a
God, it's a
fucking real
gatekeeper.
Yeah, that's all I thought too. 4 is be open to messages that come through. And
I think
5,
you were.
yeah. 5, we did not do this. Seal the door to the spirit world by ending your session properly. We just left. Goodbye. Like,
I mean,
you're welcome, Ogden.
here, this is the thing. I treated them the same way I would treat anyone in real life. An Irish goodbye. And that's the way I'll always do it.
That's how I show respect. Because
Also,
do
we
it-
did say, spoiler alert, when they said leave, we did say okay. We'll
Yeah,
go.
that was we're like, yep.
So I think that is actually ending your session properly.
Yeah. So, and I'll say it. All of that sounded dumb.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm kind of like, oh shit, we didn't do some of that stuff. Did we fuck up? But before, well, whatever. We were just pissing in the wind, man. Fuck it. So let's talk about our experience.
We're being authentic, whatever.
Yeah, we were being authentic. We were doing it live. All
Yeah.
right. So basically, the setup that we had is this little spirit box. It looks like a tiny shitty radio from the 70s, basically, like with the backlit screen. It has no bells or whistles. It has headphones that you put in, and then you do AM or FM, and then you just push the button, and it goes.
Mhm.
And then you put in the headphones, and you only hear that when the headphones are in. And then we were also blindfolded.
Yeah.
What this did, I don't know. The blindfold just kept us from like, I don't know, reading each other's lips or seeing visual cues. That's just how the internet did it. So we're like, okay,
Yeah.
blindfold.
I'd assume that's probably why. So
And
you're not
then-
influenced.
Yeah. And then the headphones are in so that you're only hearing the which is
Mhm.
what it sounds like. And then now and then like a voice would kind of come through. I don't want to say it that was the only thing. It was like it came through in the static. So it was like that was like almost how it was. Like you really
Yeah.
had to fucking focus
Yeah.
to pick out what was being
Yeah.
said.
There
Except
were a
for the
few-
spoiler alert we'll talk about later.
Yeah,
There
right.
was a few things that came through very clearly.
There were also a few times where, like, if I didn't really understand it, I didn't even say it. I was just like, ugh.
Same. I heard a lot of stuff, but it was just like it was like a noise that I knew that wasn't the but I'm like, I fucking don't know.
Yeah, I can't interpret that. Yeah.
So we were warned. I was warned pretty prevalently from people against doing this.
Oliver doesn't count.
Oliver doesn't count, but we do have a podcast friend. He did so it's Isaac Weishaupt. He does the podcast Occult Symbolism and Pop Culture. He did the Stanley Kubrick deep dive film. You know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
he actually was like, well, I wouldn't fuck with that. He was a little concerned. This was before I really knew more about the connection between the spirit box and the Ouija board. I'm on a different level now with that. But I was basically like, there's no ritual in it,
Mhm.
which is literally what I said. I was like, Ouija board has ritual. We're not doing ritual. But a lot of people are like, oh, you're going to talk to the fucking dead, which I know it's talking to the quote unquote dead, but I thought it was just we're picking up energy
Mhm.
and we're interpreting that in
Yeah.
voices.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because when we let Oliver refuse, we were originally going to do it in my house because we're lazy.
Mhm.
Oliver refused to let us do it here, and he refused
Yeah.
to come with us, which
Yeah.
is funny because then he got like fucking paranormal shit happening to him when he left. Because
Yeah, that's what you get.
we have motion sensor lights that go up and down our stairs, and he said that those were going on. And the thing that's scary is they don't all turn on at the same time. So if I'm walking up the stairs, the bottom ones go on, and then the middle, and then the top. So they were going up in succession, like something was coming up. And it was scary. I
Good.
can't remember what else he said. He said
He said
something
the door closed on its own.
yeah, and the door closed. He was like, oh, I'm like, what is she doing?
That's what he gets. That's what he gets.
As you should have come with us. We were fine. So we went to the Ogden Union Station, which, if you're not local to Utah, it's just an old train station, but it's preserved old. So it still is a
The way it
marvel to
was.
look at. Yeah, it's still like really cool. Ogden's 25th Street, honestly, if you do come to Ogden and you
I don't know why you would.
I know. I was like, if you just happen to come through, if you're gonna go to Ogden, go to 25th Street. I guess is what I would say, because it's like it's still old,
Yeah, it's historic. It's cool.
so it's a little bit of landmarky. So the Union Station in Ogden is a pretty big staple in the community and even historically. So it's known as the Crossroads of the West, and the Golden Spike was used to connect the joining railroads.
Yep.
It is
Huge.
big deal. Big deal. And it's not operational anymore in terms of like servicing trains, but it serves as a museum and an event center for people from the community to enjoy. I have been inside. Like we used to do roller derby, like our headshots there, and then I've been there for a wedding. Like it's a cool place. And the thing that I really like about it is that we've covered Crossroads in the past and how they are the premier spot to make deals with the devil if you ever want to sell your soul for some like life improvements. I think maybe if my balls would have been a little bit bigger, it would have been like, are there any Crossroads demons here? But you're not allowed to do that. Like my eyes would have started bleeding and I would have just died. And we actually had the Union Station pointed at when we went on a ghost tour last year. And I say pointed at because it wasn't a very good ghost tour.
Yeah, we went to the haunted Cold Stone.
Yeah, and she was just like, you see over there? Haunted. And we were like,
She's like, I was getting my hair done at the salon, and the girl sitting next to me said that she was inside that building and saw a ghost once. We were all like, wow.
yeah. And you had gone hiking with Typhoid Taylor, so your feet were like bleeding. You were just
Yep.
not having a good time.
I was just like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Also,
It was not
more
good.
so because we paid more for the worst ghost tour I've ever had than like when we went to Louisiana and did like a haunted history ghost tour in the fucking catacombs of New Orleans. That was $15. We paid $20 for the haunted Cold Stone tour of Ogden.
We did hardcore ghost shit in Tombstone. It
Yeah.
is so much better. You know what I mean? And that was
Yeah.
like cheap. We went on like a little mini walking tour that I think was like $11 a person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it changed me as a person. It was so fucking good.
The real haunting was the way that lady stole all of our money.
That's like, I know, right? That's like, some people say she's been dead for 30 years. Yeah, that was the worst.
Oh my
That was actually
God.
the scariest thing I've ever been through, was getting scammed in front of
Yeah.
my family and friends. So
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
literally just pointed at it and told us nothing. She gave us
Yeah.
nothing, told us nothing.
And it was also like she had no permission to go in anywhere, so we were just standing outside on the street looking at a building that 9 out of 10 times was occupied and running with people inside.
Yeah, I
of it,
know.
just looking at us
Look
out
at-
the window.
It was so dumb.
Oh my fucking god.
She was like, if you guys want to stand in the doorway, we're like, go inside. She's like, no. I'm like, oh.
Or when she was like, oh my god, when she was like talking about like the haunted apartment complex, and that guy was just trying to
There's
get
a little
in.
kid. I like looked out the window, and then she was mad that everybody was excited to have saw anything. Remember, she
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
she was like perturbed. She's like,
Mhm.
we really need to listen.
Yeah, she's like, we need to stay on track. And it's like, lady, everyone just thought they saw a ghost in the window, but it's just because that apartment complex has people in it, families, and the families are looking out onto the street at us.
So fucking dumb. Oh my god! I remember like people kept like yelling at us from their cars because it was like an active Saturday night.
Yeah,
She
it
was,
was
like,
literally a
so
busy Saturday
annoyed.
night. Yeah, she had her own mic set. It was like Britney Spears concert. She had a headset with a mic in the back, mic pack in the back. It's just so fucking
Oh my
crazy.
god! That
Oh,
was
man.
so bad.
Honestly, the way that she scammed us, she deserves that coin.
I
'cause
know. I
what a
respect
ruse.
it. I don't like it, but I respect it.
That's the thing. I don't like it, but I respect it.
It was for Courtney's birthday party too.
Yeah.
So fucking sorry, Courtney.
Yeah, sorry, Courtney.
Sorry we made you have a bad time.
Well,
and I
now
had bought
we
her
know.
Docs, so she did that whole tour in her new Doc Martens, which is like
Oh
just
my-
the cherry on top of the
You
punishment.
should have just told her to like chop her fucking
I
feet
know.
off.
I should have just made her like flip flops out of cheese graters.
Mm-hmm.
She looks really
Straight
good,
up.
though.
Yeah.
Happy belated birthday, Courtney.
Yeah, happy birthday.
So it would have been fantastic to learn the history about literally anything on that tour, or how the Union Station operated, or any ghost history at all.
We didn't even go to the fucking Union Station.
No, we didn't.
on the
We were
ghost
across
tour.
the street from it the whole time.
Oh, fuck my
but-
life.
Even growing up in Utah, like, we're only really taught that it was like a train station in the Crossroads of the West and Golden Spike. And it's super dry history. Like, there's literally nothing interesting to a child doing like a 3-week course on 2 railroads connecting, right? Like, you don't fucking care in first grade.
I feel like they could, right? There are like whole ass movies and TV series about it. They could have like really dove deep into like
They didn't want to
everything that
cover the sordid affair of like the mafia using it, or the fact that there was like the 2-bit street where all the hookers lived. Sex workers.
sex workers.
You're right. Might be. I
mean,
corrected myself.
great job, but but that's their fault. That's why no one has a
Yeah.
good education and everyone's stupid.
Yeah, and that's why people think history is boring, because
Yeah.
they take something that could potentially be cool and give you nothing. So like
Yeah.
all I learned was that they used a golden spike, which may not be real, to hammer the railroad together.
Sounds like a fucking lie.
So one thing I did not know until we did our spirit box was that the worst train wreck in Utah's history actually stemmed from the Union Station on December 31st, 1944. Known as the Bagley train disaster, or the Great Salt Lake wreck, 81 people were injured and 50 were killed when a mail/express train crashed into a passenger train. And according to exhibits.weber.edu, quote, upon impact, passengers in the dining car were killed instantly. The 3 rear cars accordioned into each other, the sleeper and day coaches were pulverized, and another car fell into the Great Salt Lake. The Great Salt Lake must have been pretty high then.
Yeah,
Because
not
it does
not
not-
like it is now. Yeah.
It does not come up that close. And I was like, how the fuck did it get up there? But then I'm like, oh, right. Humans
Also-
ruined the environment.
I read that like there were a big majority of returned veterans on this train as well.
35
Out of,
of the 50 killed were veterans.
coming back from World War
World War II.
II.
Fucking bullshit,
Yeah,
dude.
that is fucked. That is fucked.
I don't even know if they would have had a quick death either. Like,
Well, hopefully they were in the dining car that were killed
Pulverized,
instantly.
yeah.
You gotta hope that that's what it was.
there were pictures of them pulling people out of the trains that I didn't put in here, but it was just like,
I did look at those.
yeah, I figured you would see them. I didn't want to look at them anymore. They weren't like gory or graphic, but I
it's
just
all in black and white, so it like kind of takes that away, but you could tell.
So we had done very basic research, like a literal Google search that was just like Union Station history. And then we were like, oh, there was a train wreck. That was
Perfect.
literally all
Yeah.
we knew.
Yeah.
Knowing that, let's dive into some snippets of the recording we did. If you want to hear the full kit and caboodle, that is on Patreon. We recorded quite a bit of audio that Noelle put into like a beautifully curated like 30-minute video, but we're just going to do some snippets here. But we're going to give
Yeah.
you the good snippets,
Yeah.
just not the full snippets.
My
but-
entire video is fucking perfect. I don't care what anyone says. I edited that. It's a masterpiece.
I know you
Go check it
fucking
out.
killed it. I was just going to be like, yeah, put it all up, but you put in like effects. You
Thank
got
you.
me good with that. So
Thank you.
we're going to put in the Noelle and Jason snippet. This one got me. So
Did you come on a train?
Maybe.
What's your name? Or what can you tell us about yourself?
Jason?
So this one was like our first. This is when I was like, it's fucking working. Like,
Yeah.
it's working.
And it worked immediately. Like we are not seconds, we are minutes into sitting down and getting started. And not only are we getting answers, we're getting intelligent answers, which I think
Yeah.
is the thing that blew our minds away. And our videographer, shout out Ty, blew him away as well. Was like, not only were we getting answers, they were intelligent. They were answers to the questions we were asking.
And the only reason this first session ended was because one of the things said cold or like freezing, and I wanted to check the temperature on the scanner, but I inadvertently ended the session. Noah was like, I don't hear anything anymore. And I was like,
it was like
yeah,
it's
my
been
bad.
turned off.
Well, it had like a temperature thing that you could change the screen, but when you change screens, it just turned off the frequency, which was a bummer.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Seems like a waste of two features if you can't have them both running at the same time. But
I know that would have been super helpful to know if the temperature dropped.
maybe we were not doing it right. The instructions. I will say peace and love to we bought the spirit box from a paranormal group that sells on Amazon, and they send you a little like how-to guide, and it was basically just like some people like scanning through AM, some people like scanning through
it was
FM.
suggestive.
Use whatever you'd like. Some people like it scanning fast, some people like it scanning
It was like a Dr.
slow.
Zeus book.
Whatever you feel. Like it literally
Yeah.
was that. So maybe there's a way to get them both working at the same time. But
It was basically like there's no wrong way to do it, but then we did it the wrong way. I was like, oh man, how did
Yeah.
that happen? But we were scanning it in a speed we liked. How could it have gone wrong? And then it was my session.
Yes.
So we'll say insert Walter snippet here.
Chelsea and Walter.
What's your name? I think it's rude not to say.
Walter?
Walter? Tight. Walter, I'm Noelle. You're talking to Chelsea.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to tell us?
So here's what got me, because I heard Walter, like after I heard the first time, I kept hearing it, and then I just like stopped kind of like repeating because it was like Walter, 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 Walter. But guess what, bitch? This is the part that gooped me, because there was a fucking Walter who died in the Bagley train disaster.
Mm.
So I was just basically Google searching, like, because we heard three names. We heard Jason, we heard Walter, we heard Mike.
Mm-hmm.
I found nothing for Mike. That's just like too common. I found one Jason who died in 1944, but it was in August, and he's buried at the Ogden Cemetery. But I'm like, that could be something. But he died of a heart
Maybe.
attack.
Oh. Just you don't have to die in a violent way to like
Yeah,
you
to
know.
be like, I'm
Hey.
Jason.
Yeah, be like, hey, it's Jason. You don't have to be like
Yeah.
you could just have been a guy.
Right. So when I did Walter plus Union Station, got a fucking hit to the Bagley train disaster, because one of the servicemen, one of the 35 who died, was Private Walter Bernstein, and he perished in the train wreck. And I found his information on a genealogy website, and other than his Oakland address that he had been living in, the only other information that we could find out from Walter was his name coming through on the spirit box.
Wow. I love that. I love that there was like a connection there.
I know.
that, like,
Now I have like a softness in my heart for Walter now.
mhm.
Like I want to find out his story. I want to do right by him.
Yeah, I mean, why not go back and be like, hey, Walter, we looked some stuff up. Is this you? Will you confirm?
Yeah. But I didn't get that far because I got the fucking yelled at. So Noelle also gets yelled at, which we'll cover in the next recording thing. But I got fucking yelled at to get out. So the as the like stuff comes through, it's like interwoven into the EVP.
Well, do you remember the context of why
no,
you were told to get out?
no, because you were asking me questions, but I couldn't hear.
I
what you
was
were saying.
asking you. I asked if he knew that he was dead, and he said yes. And I said, what is that like? Do you feel pain? Are you okay? And then he said, stop. So I said, okay, I won't ask any more questions about that. And then I was like, you know, I brought up the haunted Coldstone. I was like, you know, I was literally in the middle of telling him about how we went on like the worst ghost tour. And then he said, get out. But
I hadn't listened to any of the sessions yet. I have no idea what questions you asked me yet because I hadn't listened to any of it yet.
Spoiler alert, that's the context.
That's fucking scary.
I know. Well,
Because-
and then so it brings up what so Ty gave us feedback today. I think he's sitting with like the experience more. And he's like, you guys shouldn't ask them if they know if they died. And I was like, what are you talking about? I would want to know that. And he's like, what if they don't know? What if they just like it just happened. And I was like, well, wouldn't you like want to, isn't that like the process of like releasing a spirit? Because like if it doesn't know, like
Yeah.
this is the whole mythos, right? Of like why a spirit is quote unquote trapped.
Yeah.
And it's like they don't know that they're dead, so they're like
Haley Joel
stuck
Osment
here.
said that in Sixth Sense. They don't
Yeah.
fucking know. It's Bruce Willis.
Exactly. But like, he was like, don't fucking ask them that, is rude. And I was like, well, I would want to know, and here's why. And also, he did know, and he said yes. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I saw that you said Ty had feedback, and I was like, what, did he say we talk too much? And you said essentially, and then I stopped reading the thread. Because I'm like, what's he going to critique us for sucking the air out of the room some more?
That was, yeah. Read the room. The room is us and the ghosts, and we're having a good time. So there was that piece of feedback, and then Oliver left feedback recently, and he was like, you guys were asking too hard of questions, like too long-winded sentences. You should have asked yes or no. And I said to him, and I'll say it again here, I am not going to infantilize ghosts, okay? Because I am on the wavelength that they are intelligent beings just like us, or were, and the energy that made them intelligent is still around. And like, why am I going to treat them like they're a toddler who doesn't know how to read?
We gave them the full radio frequency spectrum to fucking play with. Why are we limiting ourselves to yes and no's?
Exactly. I was like, I don't need the chicken shit guy telling me how to run my spirit box sessions, okay? If you want to have opinions, you could show up. If not,
Just
keep those opinions to yourself.
Ty was like mouthing questions to me when I was like, I don't know if you saw me, like, there's like a few times where I look over at Ty because I'm gooped, but I don't know when I'm like trying to read his lips in the dark, and I'm just like, why?
They were like, he was like, I think you guys, he was like talking to me on the drive home. He was like, I think you guys were too focused on like what questions to ask, that you guys were missing the conversation that was happening between who was answering the questions and the answers given out. And he was like talking about like how you brought up Day of the Dead, and then like dancing was one of them, like was one of the responses, and the way that it like came out, the answer came out during your like second mid sentence was like, yeah, people were walking around and then it was dancing. So he was like, what if that was that like spirit trying to say like, no, they weren't like walking around, they were actually dancing, like having a intelligent and constant conversation.
I'm pretty sure I asked, oh, did you dance or did you see people dance? Like, I feel like we were conversational.
I know, we definitely were conversational, but he was convinced that we were like missing out on the like back and forth, just like how you and I are talking.
Yeah.
That it was like there was more happening than we were like picking up on.
So the guy who says you talk too much and the guy who didn't come
they have opinions.
They want this podcast so bad.
I keep telling them to do a Patreon episode and they won't fucking do it. But
I know they should. They should just come on, and then everyone will be like, "Oh, that's why."
I agree. But I was like, I could get his feedback a little bit because I was like,
that is good feedback.
Busy trying to like figure out what they meant that I didn't even like put it into the sentence that was just said. Does that make sense?
I would agree with that. That is good feedback. I was being more interpretive and less conversational.
Exactly. That's the better description of it. I was trying to interpret what it meant. Like, what does this single word mean? Like, what's the paragraph this single word is trying to represent, when really they were probably just like doing conversation like we are now.
Yeah. But it's also like hard when you're in there because it's like the adrenaline rush of something working when you didn't anticipate it.
Well, I also think it's kind of that, like, to Oliver's fucking feedback, it's like that what cinema has like told us.
Yeah.
It is. And like it's just like, you know what I mean? Simple yes or no questions and vagueness that requires massive interpretation, when what we were experiencing was actually just like back and forth conversation.
And I also think, and I don't know if you experienced this because I haven't played back all of our audio yet, was just essentially the dead air when we weren't getting answers.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, then I'm just going to talk. Because there were parts where I felt like it was like 2 or 3 minutes would pass and like nothing was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So like, can you elaborate on that? What did you mean? Are we not like, what did you want to say? Do you want to take it in a different route? And then after asking like a whole bunch of questions like that, then I would go in, and I wonder if you did the same thing because you talked about the ghost tour. I would go into more conversational things. I would be like, there's people, I see all this Day of the Dead stuff. Like I didn't have a question about it, but I'm like, I'll just talk about it because there's dead air.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it, though. I think it's the best way.
Because like I thought about questions in my head on the way over, but then like, those only took me so far.
Yeah, and like, I don't know, it feels more authentic when you're being authentic, right?
There was definitely an authenticity to it that, and it's also hard to separate it because you're saying the words, and I'm like, maybe that was an issue where I'm like, Noelle is saying this, so what am I trying to draw so that Noelle can draw it out? Where I probably should have treated you a little bit more like, no, I'm not necessarily talking to what Noelle hears. For Noelle hearing something, I need to talk to what Noelle is hearing.
Yeah.
But that's hard to do because like I hear you say these words and I'm like putting our history together and I'm like, okay, so what would be the next question I would ask for Noelle to ask to the ghost, basically? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think we did well.
I think we did great.
Getting yelled at was scary though. Because I think you can agree, and we'll talk about this for our next session, but like the stuff that came through kind of sounded like the EVPs that you hear on TV, where they're kind of hard to pick up. And unless they're super clear, like we were just like, I'm not going to say it. Because there were times where it'd be like, and I'm like, I don't fucking know what that says. But it was always stuff interwoven into the noise. But Get Out was its own thing. And it was literally just, get out. And I took the headphones out and I'm like, okay. And then that was my session. I was done.
Yeah. And then you got Get Out and I got Leave.
Yeah, the Leave saga. That's all you got. You got a hello and then the Leave saga.
And is this the Leave saga right when we were done? And I heard it like 40,000 times?
Yeah, so you were like, it's just saying leave. But then I think you said one came through that was like, leave.
Yeah. So the Leave saga, which was the end of our recordings in general, was we moved to the second location and there was almost nothing. Like at first we had I heard a really like friendly like Spanish accented voice being like, hi. And I was like, hey. And then there was basically nothing. It was full dead fucking silence for minutes. Yeah. Minutes, absolutely nothing. And then there were a wave of leaves and it was all different voices. And I was trying to describe this to you guys in the car. I was like, the way that they sounded was like, there was Play Dead like twice. And then there was like a bunch of leaves, but the way that they sounded was kind of like, hey, you should go. Like, hey, leave. Like, hey, you should head out now. Like, it was that. And then the last one was like angry and aggressive and came through really strong. So that's what made me be like, huh. It was almost, if I was to like interpret how I felt, these voices were almost trying to be like, hey, it was like really great hanging out with you, but like you guys should go before, like, because there are people who aren't like as nice as us.
Yeah.
Like getting annoyed. Maybe like it was very like a conversationally friendly warning of like almost like as if you were at a party and you were like hanging out, having a good time, and then someone came up to you and was like, hey, so and so's on their way. Like, I think, you should like head out.
They turn the music off and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of like what the voices were. And then like they were in constant, like, hey. And then it was like, leave. Like the once again, same mean growling voice from before was like, leave. And I was like, okay, fine.
We haven't talked about it yet, but you and I both heard a lot of growling. Like, which was it didn't spook me out. But I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, the way
there's something else here.
Yeah, so the way that like I kind of feel about like the growling and like the mean is like, so I am of the energy, can't be created or destroyed theory. And yes, you will get like flamboyant bubbly, warm energy because that is strong. And then you will also get equally as mean and like guttural energy, which is what I think we heard a little bit of both because
Yeah.
like I remember the Jason voice being like really bubbly, like just like a guy, like
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and like of course the mean, aggressive, guttural sounds, the like that's always going to be what like resonates with you more, you know what I mean, or sticks with you more, I guess would be the better like term for it. But I think it's like it's no different than the other. It's just the like opposite side of it. It's just like the
Yeah.
other type of energy that gets like around because I could envision that growl not coming from like a fucking demon, no, but like a dude
Yeah.
who used to like chain smoke inside and hit his fucking wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got like more of the vibe that they were just it was more like annoyed and less evil. Or like a
Exactly. It was yeah.
cop. Like a cop telling you to
Yeah.
leave and you're like, ugh, well you're not the fucking boss of me, but you'll do harm if I say no, or you'll like try to
Yeah.
freak me out, you know. So
Yeah.
um
I mean, the same energy. A guy who chain smokes inside and hits his wife. full
yeah,
stop.
yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean? Just-
Potato, potato.
yeah.
But then after that we did fucking leave. So I don't feel like we poked the bear at all. I mean, you said that you've had some experiences after. I'm not sure I have, but I've also just been super busy with having a new dog.
Yeah, you've got a new puppy in the house.
Oh, yeah. Maybe that is my curse. Fucking
That
puppies,
is your heart.
man. Yeah. So, but here's what I say. I say we fucking go back, find out who Jason is, figure out what Walter wants to tell us, and I'm not going to be so hydrated this time.
I think that's a great idea. I think we absolutely should. Now that we know, now that we've got the information. But
Yeah.
again, I talked about it in the beginning. Do I feel haunted? No. But I do feel like I have the they live glasses on now, and I'm a little bit more keen to seeing and hearing everything that's going on.
I'm just like, does seasonal depression count as being haunted? Because always. I've just felt more depressed than usual, but that's also just me.
Because it snowed yesterday.
Yeah, actually, I'm like, oh, here we fucking go, winter time. So,
Yeah, don't blame the ghost for that. Okay, we're back.
and we're back. We did not
we're
go
back.
on a tangent at all of,
Nope.
of the poem I wanted to read, and Noelle said no.
We're not going to read the spirit box poem about it being nightmarish, because it's not. Because it's cool and fun, and spirits are cool and fun. So, speaking of cool and fun, especially right now, $1 gets you into our Patreon for all of our content, but we did film this entire Spirit Box experience, and it is edited and uploaded on Patreon. It's a really fun little romp. It's spooky.
Noelle did such a
it's
fucking
fun.
good job with
It's a
like
good-
editing it. It's not just like voices. Sorry to cut you off, but it's not just. I want to give you a quick shout out. Like,
Please.
Noelle fucking did it. It has like TikTok video energy where it's like funny and like information is like bah, bah, bah. I don't normally laugh out loud at like things that I watch. My humor stays internal, but you got me like I chortled a few times even. No, you did a good job.
So did I.
Fucking Emmy worthy.
Thank you so much. So go check that out. It's $1. Patreon.com/go to hell podcast, I think. But if you want to be for sure, there is a link tree in all of our bios. I'm at Noelle Fain. That is at Sithlard. We are at Go to Hell podcast. You go into that link tree. It will have obviously a link to our Patreon. It also has a link to our merch. Also, again, shout out to everyone who supported the Protect Trans Kids fundraiser. Is still going. Will never stop. All of our merch is donated, but of course that one is really specific and near and dear to our hearts, and we always want to highlight it. We also have links to Kelly Holloran or at Wild Wood Owls store on Etsy. She sells cool stickers and art for us, and also that she does on her own. Super fucking awesome. Go check her shit out. You can also get a link to our Discord page, which is fun. And again, I don't know why you would need it, but if I don't, because you're listening to us right now, but there's also links to how you can listen to us on Spotify. We are anywhere podcasts are heard.
What do you want to say?
I just got to give a shout out to, the number one homie who's never done me any wrong. So this is a quick little hail Satan.
I'm going to say hail Walter.
Hail
Thanks for
Walter
being a
and
G.
Jason
Yeah.
and Mike.
Yeah, and Mike. We didn't talk much about Mike, but we only heard that name once. But
Yeah.
thanks for chatting, guys. It was really
Yeah.
sick.
Great time talking.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Leave.
Is there something bad here, or do you just not want us here?
Leave.
Is there something bad here? Or do
That
you?
is literally all that's coming through.
That's crazy.
It's just leave. Go.
Leave. Go.
Yeah. Repetitively. 4 times in a row.
Should we go?
Probably.